Hi, I started shooting analog several years ago, and I thought about making a video about my experiences so far a long time ago, but I didn't really know where to start. But why not start at the beginning? Probably like most people, I started with digital photography, but I was always kind of intrigued by the look of the older pictures, like holiday pictures from my mom. And so I started emulating these, but I always wanted to try shooting analog myself. And one day my mom gave me an old Olympus point and shoot, and that's where it all started. The main part I really love about film is the shooting experience. It's completely different. I find myself really thinking a lot more about my composition, my shot. Should I really take a picture of it? Because every picture I take with a film camera is money. Every time I press the shutter, it's a little less money on my bank account, but I kind of love it. And the excitement of getting your scans back from the lab is always something special, because you don't know if the shots you took on that occasion really went well or are anything like you expect them to be. And the point being, it's such a different experience than shooting digital. Really helped me shoot digital more thoughtful in the end, because I don't just run around, take 20, 30 pictures of the same subject. I try to incorporate that thoughtfulness of shooting analog into my digital photography, and it's quite a unique experience. So in the end, why should I shoot film in a digital world? In the end, it's just your preference. My main reason of making this video is to give you a brief overview of the different aspects that I wish I had known when I started film photography. Honestly, it doesn't really matter if you're already a film photographer or if you're thinking of starting with film photography. These are just some insights in my workflow and some things that I consider quite helpful that might help you find the right camera, the right film stock, or the right way of working with film for you. Because honestly, there are quite a few things you can do with film that I didn't know when I started. And yeah, that's why I'm here. So the main difference between digital photography and analog photography is the point that film photography is a chemical process. How exactly it works, I don't know. It's kind of magic to me, so I won't go into deep, but the most important things to know is that there are some differences between digital and analog photography that you have to keep in mind. So the first one is that film stocks have a white balance that is baked into them. Most of the film stocks you can buy right now, like Kodak Gold or Kodak Portra, have a daylight balance, which means they are balanced at a Kelvin temperature of 5,600. So you can't change the white balance in a film stock. The only way to work around this is using a filter or choosing a different film stock that is tungsten balanced, so at 3,200 Kelvin. The problem with that is that there aren't really any film stocks left that are based at tungsten. Which is sad, but that's how it goes. The only film stocks that are currently produced that I know of that are tungsten balanced is Kodak Vision 200T and Kodak Vision 500T. There actually are some more tungsten balanced film stocks on the market right now, but you'll see why I don't mention that yet. And another thing that's quite important is the ISO of film. We all know it, on a digital camera we can just switch a reel and then the ISO setting changes. With film it's not possible as well, because film has its in-baked ISO. So most film stocks have a number written on it. Like for example Kodak Gold, there's a 200 on the roll, which stands for ISO 200. Or Kodak Portra 800, which has an ISO of 800. And that's the so-called box speed. So it's the recommendation of the manufacturer of the film to shoot the film at that speed. Many people like to overexpose the film for like one stop, so they don't shoot a ISO 400 film at 400, but at 200 to get more warm colors out of it. And a really important thing to remember is the point that film is quite forgiving considering overexposure, but not underexposure. So it's quite the opposite to digital cameras. If you overexpose film, it normally handles the highlights quite well, while the shadows tend to drown more often. Of course, there are ways to get a higher ISO out of your film, or even a lower if you want to. The way of getting a higher ISO is called pushing, which means that you shoot the film at the wished ISO. For example, I shoot a Portra 400 film, which is ISO 400, so the box speed is 400, but I shoot it at ISO 800, which is one stop overexposed. So when sending it over to my lab, I'll tell them I want to push the film for one stop because I shot it one stop underexposed, which means they will develop the film longer. This overdevelopment is the reason why this film has a higher ISO in the end, but it also means it's less contrasty and grainier. So it has some pros and some cons, nearly like anything. So you have to consider that when pushing film, because different film stocks can be pushed to different amounts. The other way around is pulling film, which means you overexpose your film, then this film is developed for a shorter time, so you get the right colors and the right exposure on the frame in the end. So for example, let's keep the Portra 400. I shoot it at 200 instead of 400, and then I tell my lab I want to pull the film one stop because I overexposed it for one stop. The effects of pushing and pulling can vary depending on the film stock. Some might be more contrasty, some be more washed out, some are more vibrant and saturated, some more desaturated. This varies from stock to stock. But it's also a quite interesting way to work with your film if you don't want to shoot it at box speed, but want to try something new. So to give you a brief overview of what I started with, what kind of cameras there are, the different film stocks, different development methods. I try to keep it simple but understandable and cover all the important topics. As I said, I started with a Olympus point and shoot. My mom gifted me, and I immediately took it to a holiday with a friend of mine. To be honest, I loved the results of it, and since then there wasn't any holiday I went to without an analog camera, because I loved the experience of shooting with it. It was quite handy. I got the model here. It is a little bit jammed, so I got some gaffer tape on it. But in the end, it's a very simple, very handy camera. It fits in my pocket. It's quite simple. You have a zoom button and the shutter, and that's it. So you can't really make anything wrong with that. And yeah, it was a great experience for me. So if you want to start with film photography but don't really know where, I can only recommend the first type of camera I'm going to talk about today, which is point and shoots, because most of them are quite simple, quite affordable, and still in very good condition. I just took a look at my shelves to count the point and shoot cameras I collected over the years, and I think I have about 5. And to be honest, I really enjoyed shooting with every one of them because they are quite simple to use. 3 of them have autofocus, auto exposure, so it's like the simplest way to start with film photography. In the end, of course, there are like the disposable cameras by Kodak and Agfa and Ilford as well. But honestly, I'm not a big fan of these. I once shot one and it was quite fun, but the lack of controls wasn't really my cup of tea. I missed the autofocus, I missed the auto exposure, I missed the really good flash, because those disposable cameras do have a flash most of the time because they need them. They have a fixed focus f9 lens normally, maybe even f11 if you're unlucky. So apart from shooting in bright sunlight, you're gonna need the flash. And That's something I don't really like because it really limits you, of course, because you can only shoot subjects quite close to the camera in the dark, but not too close because it's a fixed focus lens and you can't focus with it, of course. It's a fun experience, but to be honest, it's in the name. It's a disposable camera. It's not meant to be used several times, so it's a lot of waste that is produced through these cameras, and in the end, the price point doesn't really hold up to it because, yeah, it's like 15 to 20 bucks for one of these cameras. The film comes included, so that's pretty nice. But these point and shoots, you can find some pretty good used models for like 50 bucks to 100. If you're looking around, you can use these cameras for years to come. So I have this one, like the Olympus from the 90s. It's older than me, but it still works perfectly fine. So my favorite point and shoots I own are these two. This is Olympus Trip 35 and the Olympus Pen EES. Great cameras. I don't know exactly when they were made, at least my models, maybe around the 60s or 70s, and they work perfectly fine. I never had any issues with them. The light meters are still super accurate, and I really enjoy shooting with these. They don't have autofocus, but I think it's quite easy to get into the focusing system of these cameras. They have zone focusing, which means they have like 4 different focusing setups for infinity and closer setups. It's a little bit fiddly, so you have to get into it, but I think it's quite easy to get into it. I didn't really miss that much shots because of the focus, especially with the Pen EES, which, yeah, I dropped the lens hood. Because this one only has 3 settings. So in the end, I really enjoy shooting with point and shoots. They are quite easy to use. They are small and lightweight. I can put them in my pocket. So for traveling, amazing cameras. So if you want a simple to use, handy camera just to start film photography or to use on vacation or anything like that, I can only recommend using a point and shoot. The next type of camera I want to talk about are rangefinder cameras. To be honest, the point and shoots that I own and all the point and shoots that I know are rangefinder cameras, because a rangefinder camera just means that you have a viewfinder in the camera, which is its own little window through the camera, and you don't look through the lens. So for example, the camera that I got here is the Vogtländer Vito B, which is actually the first camera that my grandmother bought. And you have this little window right over here, and this is your viewfinder. So you don't look through the lens, which makes focusing quite difficult from time to time. That's one of the reasons I really like the zone focusing systems on the Trip and the Pen EES, because they make it a lot easier. And to be honest, one of the favorite photo experiences of mine was with this old medium format Vogtländer Besser, which is an old German camera from the 30s or 20s. Let's call it a rangefinder camera. You have a little mirror in here, so you can composite your frame more or less. And to be honest, this experience was amazing because it took me way longer to composite a frame with this camera, but the experience with it was great because it really slowed me down. I had to think about the frame. It was a relaxing experience, kind of meditative, for me at least. But those older cameras can be tricky. I got an old Agfa Standard from my great-grandfather, and it's a little jammed. So not the beginner-friendliest cameras, but something to look after if you really want to have an experience that is calming and relaxing, because you have to take your time. So the last type of camera I want to talk about are SLRs, like these. This is a Nikon FA. It's the first SLR that I got from my parents, and I love this camera. It never let me down. It's a lot heavier than my point and shoots, of course, and even heavier than my medium format rangefinder camera, so that tells you a little bit about it. So for me, to be honest, this is the best way of shooting 35mm or film in general. Of course, it depends on your use case. This is not really a camera that I would take on most of my holidays, but I love the way of shooting with it. It's a great camera, and yeah, it doesn't come with like features like autofocus and all the handy features that a point and shoot has that make it really convenient and simple to use. You have to think a little bit more, but this one is sadly a little bit jammed. That's why I got this little light meter on top of it. A friend of mine has the Nikon FM2. The light meter is working perfectly fine as well. So you can't really go wrong with an SLR. So yeah, these are just great cameras. I love shooting with SLRs. There are many different options out there. Nikon has some great cameras, Canon as well, Minolta or Olympus as well, and Pentax of course. I just realized that I forgot to talk about one type of camera while filming the rest of the video, but I don't want to let it out, so that's what I'm doing now. It's the TLR, the twin lens reflex camera, which works similar like a SLR, but they don't have a interchangeable lens system normally. I don't know of one with a interchangeable lens system, maybe there is one. And most of them are medium format actually. I only have one TLR in my collection, let's call it that, which is an old Rolleiflex. So how it works is you have two lenses down here. One is for the viewfinder and one is to take the picture. I have a little mixed feelings about these type of cameras. I really enjoyed shooting with this one. I got it for quite cheap actually, but the reason is it's broken. When I shot a roll of expired Ilford in it, I only got 4 pictures out of it. And yeah, that's not that good for a 6x6 medium format image, because normally you would get 12 frames out of one. So that was quite disappointing. But the shooting experience was quite fun, because you have this top-down viewfinder like on a Hasselblad or an Exacta, which is always a quite different experience of shooting. They are not really handy, to be honest, because they're big and chunky, but first of all they look amazing. That's one plus point. They have style, they have a lot of style. But to be honest, TLRs are a great camera system, and I had a lot of fun with this one, even though I just got 4 out of 12 pictures from it. But don't know if I want to shoot it again, but that's mainly because it's broken. But these ones are cameras to keep in mind if you want to start with medium format. These Rolleiflexes, for example, or the Yashicas have extremely sharp lenses. Of course, you can't change the lenses, so you're fixed. You have a fixed focal length, you're stuck with it. But sometimes it's better to not be able to change a lens, because then you don't have the temptation to buy more. While editing the video, I decided to split it into 2 parts, so thank you very much for watching the first episode of my analog guide. On the next episode I'm going to talk about the different film stocks, pricing, and of course my recommendations. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you have like any questions or future suggestions for videos, then please let me know in the comments. And until then, take care and more pictures.